everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bullish or Bearish. Now, we're actually going to be talking about a really interesting topic today because that's what we do. We talk about interesting hot topics, then give you both sides of the story so that you can actually kind of make your own decision.
Yeah, so that was Angela. She didn't introduce herself. My name is Tony, and we're from Success Options Group. And like she was talking about, I mean, we are going to start branching off into a whole bunch of different topics, and it's kind of what's like hot, what's at the forefront of whatever social media you're in, like Twitter, Instagram, whatever. And today's topic is talking about generics, or more specifically, the hot one right now is talking about cost plus drugs, and that's it's a company that's been created by Mark Cuban. So Cuban of the Shark Tank kind of shows, and then also the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, right? And the basic premise behind this whole thing is that basically drugs and the pharmaceutical companies are overpricing drugs, and they're forcing people to pay huge amounts above what it actually costs to produce that drug, right? And these are all generics, right? So they're all things off of patent. And what he's doing is he creates a simple, model where he's just charging 15% above the cost it requires to make it. So he charges you shipping, he charges you that stuff, but it's very clear, it's very in front of your face, and it's very, you know what you're going to pay, basically.
So I will admit that his program is very clear. However, clarity does not mean that they actually offer like everything that you actually need, because the actual generics that he actually offers are really limited. He can't offer all of them. And even if he can, the stuff that is cheapest to produce is the stuff that has been on the market the longest, the oldest drugs, the ones that, well, some of them, yes, are still very much in common use, like aspirin and that kind of thing. But the fact is that as our society progresses and needs more different kinds of drugs, more targeted drugs, those things are all not included in his list.
Right. So, I mean, it gets, being an Asian, it's the massive cost savings that show up on the website. It's like 90% off. Like, so why are other pharmaceuticals charging that amount, right? So, I mean, Angela, you have experience. You were a pharmacist. You also worked for companies that made pharmaceutical drugs. I've worked for big consumer product companies, and the idea of generics takes away from the business of the big corporation, right? And I think what this gets at is that it's creating a more fair price model. And who can, as a consumer, I don't want to pay more. I want a good deal, right? So that's what this is providing. It's a great thing.
So you say it's a great thing. And if you're only looking at what he gives you on the website, you might think so. But the thing is, where is he getting these numbers that he's comparing to? Is he comparing the generic to the brand name? That's how you get a 90% off? Of course, the brand name drug is going to be a lot more expensive because, one, the brand name drug also has to pay for the fact that they did all the research and all the stuff that needed to get approved. I mean, that is what? I think 9 out of 10 possible drugs fail before one actually gets to market. And even that one is not necessarily a big blockbuster that everybody knows about. In fact, of the ones that get to market, like out of 3, only one of them is a semi-successful drug. And maybe 1 out of 6 is a blockbuster. So the drug companies, yes, the brand name drugs are super expensive, but that's because they're trying to recoup all of these like overhead costs. And even when you talk about like retail, like you're talking about the actual retail stores, they have overhead costs too, like the cost of running their pharmacies, the cost of hiring people. You have to realize that his whole thing is an online thing. That gets rid of so many of the overhead costs that yes, he can make it lower price, but what else are you giving up,
So, I mean, I think that's where the whole patent protection comes into play, right? So these companies do get this, this certain period of time where they're the only seller, right? So they get to make that money. They get to recoup their R&D costs that you were talking about. I mean, what this really comes down to is the commoditization of something, right? So whether it's a product or it's a service, it becomes a commodity, right? So like for companies that want to survive, you need to keep inventing, keep providing value to your consumers, right? And that's where he's getting at with this company is like these companies are no longer providing the value. They're just taking more and more money because they're not lowering their costs, even though it doesn't cost that much to produce it. They're just charging the same fee because they can get away with it.
So there's actually a difference in the different kinds of companies, because only the really big pharmaceutical companies make like actual brand name products. What you're actually talking about is all the little companies that are just like, after a patent expires, all of these little companies go and start buying the active ingredient and start churning out like generics, because now they can try to make money off of the generic. Those companies, as long as they can get an FDA thing saying that it's equivalent, and it only has to be like within, I think there's a percentage, it has to be 90% equivalent or something to be considered equivalent to like the actual brand name product before, and then they can sell it as a generic. And so what those companies do is they're trying to make money off of, having to buy the active ingredient, because a lot of times, one, they either have to buy the actual active ingredient from the original company, or they have to figure out a process to make the active ingredient themselves. Now, even if you have the chemical formula to make the active ingredient, that doesn't mean it's easy to make.
So I guess and this is where it's going to tie into like a lot of our different other topics. And we've talked about like different types of brokers that you have in financial markets. It comes down to like it comes down to competition is good. That's I would say the broad statement. So this cost plus drug provides competition in the marketplace. So then ideally what would happen is these other producers would lower their prices because they want the volume. They want people to, they want to keep their production lines running, producing drugs as well, right? So they're trying to maintain volume. I mean, we've seen this in like Amazon, and like people will resell Amazon goods, right? They're resellers, so they're marking it up. Or like in the brokers and the financial industries, right? You create a better mousetrap. You create a better app, a better trading thing. And competition is good, right? And as long as you're providing value, providing service, or providing something of value to your customers.
So you have a point in that it's good to provide value. And I'm not saying that this, this cost plus, program is not, a good thing. I mean, it does, like, if it offers more affordable drugs and it's something that people can use to like better their health, there's nothing wrong with it. But they also have to know that you have to realize that there is only limited specific drugs that they offer, and your insurance won't cover any of it. It's all, you have to pay all of it cash. Like, you can't use your insurance to pay anything. So this is all out of pocket as well. So this is another, like, you pay so much for your insurance and it doesn't apply to anything from cost plus. So
I mean, yeah, it gets a little bit like what we talked about in one of our prior videos. It's talk about like how brokers, and you're getting free trading, right? So, well, maybe you need to dig, you need to peel the onion back a little bit. I'm using like little sayings here, but if you're getting something for free, what is the product? What is being sold there? And oftentimes maybe it's your information is getting sold, right? So that's why Facebook is free. That's why all these things are free. It's like they're still trying to make money. And we got a little bit off topic, but basically what cost plus gets at is it's providing competition in the marketplace. And that's why I feel like it's a great thing for them. And it's gonna, you mentioned like pharmaceutical companies, and this might detract from them wanting to keep creating products. Well, then how are they going to provide value to their consumers, right?
So the thing is that with pharmaceutical companies, it's not like you can't just say pharmaceutical companies and they're all in one batch. There are different types, and different types do different things. Like the companies that just make generics, they're just, in a sense, copycat companies. They do almost no research and development. All they do is take drugs that have gone off patent, and then like they aim for that couple years right off of patent to try to make as much money as they can from the generics. That is their business model. Now, the one that you're talking about is the big pharma who have to do all the research. Well, they have their own way of, doing things, their own bottom line of how they have to do things. And it's a lot more complicated than I can go into, like, a short video. But what you're saying is that this kind of thing is not necessarily a bad thing. It's a good thing that there are other options for people to look at. It's just that you have to know what you're getting into when you decide to use this option. It's kind of like how we talk about with stocks or with like real estate. It's not about what's available for you to use, but do you have the education and the knowledge to actually use it correctly, to make it work for you? Because, for instance, like even if you're using this, do you know if it's connected to your other health information? That's one reason why you're supposed to get all of your drugs at one pharmacy, is because it connects all of your health information so that you don't have to worry about side effects or drugs interacting. I mean, there's a lot of other benefits that you're paying for when you're using like a specific like retail pharmacy, because all of their systems are connected. If you buy half of your stuff here and half of the stuff there, and you get a health problem because they interact with each other and you didn't know, and your two pharmacists didn't contact each other because they didn't know that you were ordering from two different places, neither of them are responsible for the serious medical condition that you might get into. So then who are you going to blame for that?
That's a very good point. No, I mean, so like you said, just to rehash it gets down to like, what is the business model, and the fact that price doesn't necessarily mean that's not necessarily always the bottom line. You need to know more, right? And make sure you hit the like, hit the subscribe if you like this kind of video. I know we got a little bit off of financial topics, but it's also something that people are interested in, and hopefully write some comments in here or sign up for a workshop, and we'll see you next time.